Good afternoon, everybody. We're waiting for a few more people to join us this afternoon. And so as we get started here today, just wishing everybody a happy July. This is our July monthly WIN meeting, our membership meeting, and virtual, of course. Back to see you all here on this webinar. Today we have a really special event planned. It's called Tales from the Top, and we get to spend some time with two amazing women who are in cannabis. I'm not going to steal the thunder. You probably already know who they are. But before we get started with that, I just want to say that a big thank you and a shout out to Stanton Chase, Executive Search. They are hosting our webinar today, and also Cathy, Logue from there will be joining us and asking questions, moderating, really digging into what it takes to be a woman in the cannabis space and growing a company and making it. And so we're very excited about that. Our guest today, our special guest, is Kim Rivers. She is the founder and CEO of Trulieve Cannabis, and Cathy will introduce her in just a minute. So for those of you who know or don't know about the ArcView Group, we are the largest investor network in cannabis. And a few years ago, we started this group called WIN, the Women's Investor Network. And the reason we did that is we want to take a stance for women in cannabis. And we're championing this movement to bring more women investors, companies, and products to the forefront of this industry. We have a very strong voice. We are thought leaders, and this is our platform. We're also redefining what the meaning of investor is. And it's not just the traditional sense of an investor, of someone investing in your company, but also investing in the space, investing in the next generation of women leaders, of those who are building and creating these amazing products for women. So we are all investing in this space, and we're redefining that word as we build out the WIN network. So this is a tremendous group of women. If you haven't joined, please do. We want to highlight the journeys of these women in this space and support each other, because to be honest, we can't do this alone, and we are better together. Good friend of mine, Michelle Patterson, always says that we 10x ourselves when we work together. So I'm very grateful to have Kim Rivers here and getting some time with her this afternoon, and also getting a chance to speak and engage with Cathy Logue. And so without further ado, let me introduce Cathy, and then I will hand this over to her to be able to get us kicked off into this program. So Cathy is the founding managing director of the Toronto office of Stanton Chase, which is a top 10 retained executive search firm with over 70 offices worldwide. She began her career as a CPA and now leverages her finance expertise as a global leader of the Stanton Chase CFO and private equity practice, specializing in CFOs while working with clients across the entire C-suite. Over 20 years in executive search, Cathy has cemented long-standing partnerships with clients, ranging from startups to publicly traded companies, helping them attract high-performing talent and making their most important business decisions, and shaping their board and executive leadership teams. With a strong focus in the cannabis sector, Cathy is passionate about diversity and inclusion, and fiercely committed to building teams that will drive growth and lead transformational change in this emerging industry. Welcome, Cathy.
Thank you very much, Kim. I'm delighted to be here and privileged to be here with you two wonderful, exceptional leaders. So maybe I'll start just a quick blurb about Stanton Chase and a plug before we get going. So we just celebrated our 30th anniversary. We're very happy about that. We were founded in 1990 and now have 70 offices around the world, 45 countries. Most recently, we've been working with clients in the cannabis space, which is why I'm glad to be here today. We're actually one of the first global firms to do it. And I always say we were doing it before everyone thought it was cool. Working closely with my partners, my partner Lindsay Lautz is here from our LA office. So we're really from sea to shining sea. Another thing we can get into today is we were one of the first firms that launched a diversity practice in 2011, and that's something we're very, very, very committed to. Perhaps I'll introduce Kim. Kim, I know well. I've had the chance to work with very closely. Kim is the CEO of Trulieve, which is a vertically integrated seed-to-sale operation based in Florida. Kim joined Trulieve at its inception, has been a key driver in its growth, from customer-centric vision, strong growth, strategic expansion, and industry-leading profitability. One of the few companies to have a taxes payable line on their balance sheet. Rivers is instrumental in building Trulieve's market position in home state of Florida, which is a strong foundation for expansion across as a multi-state operator. In her spare time, Kim serves as second vice chair on the National Cannabis Roundtable. She received her bachelor's degree in multinational business from Florida State University and her Juris Doctorate from the University of Florida. Thank you very much, Kim, for joining us. So today what we're going to be focusing on, having two women founders and CEOs here, is just some of their stories. Really want to hear about what brought you here, and some of the leadership lessons you've learned along the way, and also advice. Everyone is interested in this, advice to other women entrepreneurs as they enter into the space, and how do you lead and drive change in this hyper growth industry where there's no playbook, and add to that the importance of building the right teams as you do. Just before we go in, reminder to the audience, we're going to be using the Q&A function. So throughout the webinar, you'll have a chance to submit your questions. Laura, who's here, is going to monitor throughout, and we have time at the end to be able to take those questions to Kim and myself. And if you are a member that signed up for the after party, hoping you can join us live right after this, there'll be a separate link to join at the end of the webinar. So without any further ado, maybe if I could start just a little bit of additional context, and I'll start with you, Kim R. On your background, how you came to recognize the unique potential in this industry, and then taking from that, how you've seen opportunities for women evolve in the industry.
Great, thanks so much, Cathy, and it's so great to be here. So, you know, it's interesting. You know, I am the daughter of a police officer and a assistant principal of an elementary school. So, yeah, you can whatever you're picturing in terms of what that upbringing looks like, you are probably correct. And so this was not a natural path, I would say, for me, but it is one that I feel so blessed to have to be a part of. And really, you know, when cannabis first was coming to Florida, I had the unique opportunity to really be asked whether or not I was interested in joining this wonderful team that has become Trulieve. And really, I'm also a recovering lawyer, as you mentioned. And so my initial response to that was, you know, typical lawyer fashion. You know, I'm not sure, and it depends. So did a lot of research, and as women, we typically do, you know, a lot more diligence in my opinion, and before you take that first step. And we can talk about that a little bit more in this fast-growing industry, how that's both good, and maybe on the flip side of that can be, in some cases, right, a detriment. But in that instance, it was, I think, very helpful, and that I slowed the team down in the sense that we really took about 6 months to travel the country and really get an understanding of what this industry had to offer. It was when this whole concept of multi-state operators was first emerging, and really helped shape the Trulieve journey, in that we really decided strategically during that time frame that we were going to, instead of, you know, spreading ourselves across the country, that we really had this opportunity to really create a true brand and go deep in a home market. And so really, I think because of that time that we invested on the front side, it led to our positioning in the state of Florida, which of course, you know, has turned out well to date, and has provided us really a solid foundation that we've been able to learn strategic lessons across the entire supply chain, certainly in building this brand with customers. And we just opened our 51st location in the state of Florida. And now we're really well positioned and poised to take not only that profitability, but also those lessons into next markets as we grow a little bit more methodically and strategically than others. And I always say, look, there's lots of ways to win in this industry, but that was the path that we decided to go down. And with respect to women, you know, what I would say is that, and and I speak to a lot of, and I am a woman entrepreneur at heart, and I've done a lot of things, life before cannabis, if you will. But one of my pieces of advice is to take your seat at the table. And this is an industry where there are seats to be taken. And it's really important that we as women understand that our perspective in this industry, particularly as it relates to how companies are forming and brand formation, is so critical, because we are an emerging sector of consumers in this industry, and it is important that our voices are at the table when making those strategic decisions, because who knows better than a woman in terms of what will appeal to us across brands and across the sector.
Thanks, Kim K. I know your trajectory has been slightly different coming in from the tech space, but
yes,
it sounds like there's a lot of parallels here.
Well, I think all of us sort of, had something before cannabis, or at least a lot of us did. And yeah, for me, it was, technology. So you're a recovering lawyer. I'm a recovering accountant. So I started my career actually at Deloitte, and I was there for a couple of years and realized I really love the entrepreneurial journey. And that was where I got my energy from. And so I've started 6 companies, either as founder or co-founder or some combination thereof, and exited them all. That's a bold statement. Now, they weren't all great exits, but I did exit them all. And fortunately for me, one was in the tech space. I built a fintech software platform that got acquired by a Canadian company, which allowed me a chance to sort of semi-retire. And I always said that I wanted to be an investor. And I always would look at the table, like you said, Kim, I look at the table and there's very few women. I was fortunate enough to have 2 women on my board and 2 women investors, key investors in my last company, that company that I sold. And so I said to myself, I am going to be an investor. And so I joined a bunch of different angel groups. I started making investments. I learned quickly that I needed to do those with other people, not just by myself, because there's so many things that, that these nuances of a deal. But I also started a chapter of Golden Seeds in Southern California. And Golden Seeds is one of the preeminent women's angel investor networks. There's about 350 of us across the country in multiple chapters. And one of the things that really struck me when I was first starting to get into, investing, doing my research about that, was, very few women were actually investors. And so back when Golden Seed started in 2006, about 5% of women identified as an angel investor. That number is about 28% now. So if you think about what we've done in the last, 10, 14 years, is that we've more than, exponentially grown ourselves as angel investors. Not so much the same with VCs. We got some work to do, but we're starting to really put our money to work and starting to become investors. And to me, that's my biggest passion. And so I became a member of ArcView when I wanted to get into the cannabis space. I did a lot of research, and this was the place to be. And so I surrounded myself with these amazing individuals and got a chance to launch my own company too. So I started another company while I was at ArcView called MyJane. And then we sold it to another member of ArcView called Manifest 7. And so I feel like I'm kind of like steeped in the ArcView experience from the beginning through the end. And I started in as CEO earlier this year, and it has just been fantastic. And I would just say that, cannabis is so many things. It isn't just a brand or a grow or this or that. There's so many avenues that you can literally put a toe in the water with cannabis and get started and have that be your sole business or a part of a larger business. And so there's really just so many things to explore.
Thanks, Kim. It sounds like 2 entrepreneurs, founders, drivers in uncharted territory that is this exciting space. And that speaks to leadership. So maybe that's a good segue to the next question that I had. And maybe switching gears a little bit, and I don't want to mention COVID specifically because we could probably talk for hours on the impact of that. But over the past year, we've been faced with several game-changing issues, and there's no playbook. Maybe there will be as we get through here, but one of the things I have seen, I think others have seen, is that many women leaders have stepped up through the crisis, and maybe that's changed our thoughts on what traditional leadership attributes are. I think it has. And maybe Kim, I'll go back to you again, KR. coming from your prior career in a corporate role, founded a company, been through challenges along the way. A startup is never easy. You make it look easy. What's been the most important thing that you could say that you've learned or will, be able to take away from this crisis specifically?
Yeah, that's a great question, Cathy, and there are so many lessons. So, I mean, I think that, the first thing that I'll say is, and maybe something that has struck me repeatedly about this industry specifically, is that cannabis is personal. It just is, and it's personal with an emotional connection. We all come to cannabis with some sort of thought or emotional response, right? I mean, I just mentioned that, my dad was a police officer, my mom was a assistant principal, right? I mean, they definitely come with, with a certain emotional response to cannabis. And so I think, as a woman, recognizing that and leaning into that has always been kind of a part of my leadership style. And really focusing on, the patient and connectivity, and not being afraid to recognize and say, I understand that there is emotion behind our experiences. And so I think with when you overlay what's been happening with our country over the last 6 months, it rings more true maybe today than it even does when you just talk about cannabis, right? And I think having the ability to step up and say, listen, I get it. I'm tired too. I'm a mom. I've got 2 kids. Like, I'm juggling. We're all trying to figure this out. Being able to connect with employees and say, listen, we all need to take a breath. We're living in a bit of an alternate universe, as I say, because we're actually busier than ever. We've opened, 3 stores over the last month and a half. During all of this, we're hiring, we've onboarded 250, 300 employees during this. So it is this whole, where we're running, and we've got the home lives where maybe our significant other, our spouse, our kids are experiencing this time in a very different way. And so talking about those things and making sure that we're communicating often. And so not only internally with our employees, but also externally with our patients, and through all different methods of communication. And it's just communicate. We've stepped up our meetings. We've stepped up our in-person via this medium. Thank God for technology, to make sure that we're all checking in with one another, and that we're making sure that we're staying connected. Again, at that human level, and trying to translate that to our customers. I mean, when we experienced a over 50% increase in call volume, a 200% increase in delivery demand. I mean, it's just, and then people are stressed and we're all anxious. And so again, leaning into that, acknowledging that, saying, listen, we get it. And then pivoting and rapid, as we always do, but even more so, right? Rapid adaptation of technologies, rapid adaptation of new protocols, rapid adaptation of meeting that customer and that patient where they are, because that's always our responsibility. But again, just focusing on that understanding that, we're all in this together, and we all need each other in order to get through it. And I think that may be, a bit of a unique female characteristic.
Yeah, definitely. You're dealing with disruption in a disruptive industry, so it's just exponentially. It's kind of like changing the tires on the car when it's going 100 miles an hour, and you don't know if it's forward or reverse some days, probably. Kim K, you must have seen similar. Like, what have you seen, the good, the bad, the ugly through this?
Wait, what day of the week is it? I think that's one thing is, doing daily planning versus sort of weekly or monthly planning. I mean, even like, brand new startup mode, you had at least a few days in between sort of having to change the ship a little. So I think that's one thing, like Kim, you were saying, is iterating quickly, seeing what's working. But, also one of my favorite people that I follow is Tony Hsieh, and he started Zappos. And he went through Y2K, the financial crisis and meltdown, and probably 2 or 3 other things. And one thing he always came back to is, I'm just going to be open and honest, and I want to put my customer first. And his customer was actually 3 people, or 3 different personas. It was the actual customer, it was his employees, and it was his vendors. And so he literally supported all of them during these crisis moments and wasn't just focused on making sure the customer got what they want, but also the employees were taken care of and they could get what they wanted to or needed from him. And then also on the end of that was his vendors, because he said without sort of the three legs of the stool, none of this really works. And so what I appreciate about what he's done and written about in multiple ways is that, you know, caring for these people and being open and honest about it. And he actually took a lot of heat from, you know, the market and everything for writing a 12-page, you know, email to his employees saying, you know, we're going to do this, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but this is what I want, and this is what we can do together. And he really set the stage for it, and they were very successful. And they came out of that, you know, with a billion-dollar company that got acquired by Amazon. And so to me, these are these transformational moments that leaders are really, I wouldn't say born, but they're birthed, you know, they're literally, you know, you have an opportunity to step in, like you were saying, in being that leader, because there isn't a playbook. Nobody's going to say, oh, well, that you shouldn't have tried, because you should be trying all these things. And I also think from women, we're pretty resilient. I mean, we've had to, you know, overcome a lot of things. This is our 100th anniversary this year of the suffrage movement, which, you know, isn't a lot of time if you think about it. We've only been having the right to vote for 100 years. And look at the things that we've been able to accomplish, you know, over this amount of time, and being able to do, you know, as a gender. And I think there's just so much more that we have, and we just have to really, you know, step into those roles and ask for a seat at the table. Actually, no, go sit at the table, and then they can tell you why you're not supposed to be there.
That's I like that. Well, I guess what we've seen working in the industry now for a few years, and we've had an opportunity more to watch it from, you know, with an outside lens, if you will. The leadership needs and the leadership attributes of what makes an individual successful are totally changed. So, you know, there's or certainly heightened, you know, so and as the industry has evolved, Kim, you've seen it through some of your cohorts, that person who is going to kick off, you know, the visionary founder is not necessarily the best person to be leading the company as, you know, to profitability and to as a CEO. And I would say hold Kim out here as an exception, a wonderful exception. And I won't even tie that into why maybe women make better leaders, because I refuse to go there. But it's, you know, it's about a discipline, a strategic approach to growth, and it's, you know, sort of that playbook. So there's no pandemic playbook, but I guess women have shown through this that they're more adaptable to it. And I think the factor of adaptability is one of the key things that make people, you know, successful or not in this industry. It's, you know, resiliency, adaptability, ability to pivot on a dime when you don't know what day it is, you don't know where you're going. So no, thank you very much. So another thing I wanted to talk about is sort of the industry more broadly. Let's back it up. So, so the industry now that we're seeing, it's growing at a faster rate than the economy. You know, that's good and bad, I guess. Good for us. Do you think that's going to open up the door for more women leaders? And so I'd like to talk about that. And I'd also like to tie this into, you know, with high growth is transformational change, disruption. And I'd like to tie this into the Black Lives Matter movement, and more broadly, diversity and inclusion, because it's a bigger issue than that. So Kim R, one of the things you do in your spare time, which I still not sure when that is have played a leadership role on the cannabis, on the National Cannabis Roundtable, the NCR. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the NCR, basically it's a mandate's very simple, and it's advancing 21st century policy in the US. And some might say it's advancing policy into the 21st century, basically advocating for the legal cannabis industry, you know, common sense regulation, tax equality, you know, things like the Safe Banking Act. And Cresco and Trulieve are both playing very, very important roles on that. But specifically, what I'd like to ask you about is the NCR's corporate social responsibility pledge, because I know that's something that means a lot to you personally.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question. So, and when you talk about just the industry in general, and we talk about taking a seat at the table, I think that when Trulieve was founded, and as I mentioned, I had the distinct pleasure of being part of that group, and then moved into the CEO role. You know, when considering, right, whether or not it was a role that I wanted to take on, um, and knowing that it was going to be transformative in terms of this is where we're started, and now here we are, a publicly listed company, which has a very specific requirements as CEO. And I enjoy many aspects of them, and some, but I think when I thought about it, and I was weighing all of the pros and cons. One of the things that really I continue to be energized by is the opportunity to build a company from the ground up that has diversity and inclusion at its core. And I knew from the very beginning that if I was going to be in the seat, that I'm the type of person, and Cathy, I know you know this from working with me, that what you see is what you get, and if I'm going to talk the talk, I'm going to walk the walk. And what I refused to be was a female CEO, and that was kind of it, right, as a company. And so it's been very critical to me that we take deliberate and purposeful steps to build Trulieve as a diverse and inclusionary organization. And as I say, it's really part of who we are. And I like to also say that we are profitable and we have been successful because of our diversity and inclusion, not in spite of. So sort of changing the narrative within this industry that diversity and inclusion is a check the box, it's an afterthought, it's a page on the website, that really instead it's how we operate. Hard stop, period, next sentence. And so as coming into as part of the National Cannabis Roundtable, there was talk of a diversity and inclusion initiative, and I was fortunate to be asked very early on in these discussions to join that team, and worked very, very closely with other members of that group. I should note that the National Cannabis Roundtable's leadership is all female, which is fabulous, and so we are making waves on the Hill with a female leadership team, which also drew me to that organization. And so, when we sat down, what we really wanted to make sure of is that this wasn't just words on paper, that we really had, and for me, accountability and transparency is something that's very important and critical in the diversity and inclusion space. So again, it's pretty easy to put some words on a piece of paper. It's pretty easy to say something, but it's a lot harder when there are measurables and deliverables, and we're holding each other and ourselves accountable. And so with the pledge, what that specifically has required is that every single CEO that is a member of the National Cannabis Roundtable, we have literally signed our names to specific initiatives that again are accountability based. And right now we're in the first phase where we're all going through a measurement exercise of really just being transparent and honest. This is where we are. This is where we are with our employment levels. This is where we are with our leadership levels. This is where we are with how we're contracting with minority and women-owned businesses. This is where we are in terms of our external relationships. And it's just a scorecard, right? And that's sometimes I think the hardest part, taking a deep breath and saying and giving each other the space to say, we are where we are, and that's okay. And we're not going to be perfect, because if we were perfect, there would be no reason to have diversity and inclusion initiatives, right? So we have to start somewhere and then measure, right? And so, I am very, very excited about that initiative, and things that I mentioned obviously are a part of that, along with how we're partnering and mentoring. Mentorship is a huge part of what we're doing at Trulieve as well. How we're lifting up women and minority entrepreneurs who want to enter the space, how we're supporting them, how we're investing them, how we're paving the way. So, one of the things that we are talking about obviously is safe banking. And folks may ask, well, how is that gonna, how does that translate? Well, I personally believe that access to capital, particularly for women and minority-owned businesses in this space, is very difficult. And so while we may have all these wonderful state initiatives that allow for and provide licenses to women and minority and veteran-owned businesses, quite frankly, those businesses then get a license and they're thrown off the cliff, because there is no ability to access any of the banking programs and quite frankly banking mandates that there are in this country for women and minority and businesses. SBA is off limits. I mean, we've got some fabulous programs in this country that support and that lend to at very attractive super competitive rates to minority and women-owned businesses, but unfortunately, because of the nature of our industry, folks can't take advantage of those. So again, taking it one step further and saying, this is the why, and this is what we would like to see, and this is why we're advocating for it. It's not just to serve ourselves, it's also because we see this as the next step up for those that are coming behind us that we hope to partner with in this industry as it matures. So, thank you for the question. I think it's super critical. I'm hopeful that in this moment with Black Lives Matter, we can embrace it and we can move the conversation forward in a meaningful way. It is multi-layered and it is complex. And I think that it's going to, it's a marathon, not a sprint, and there's not a single solution. I think in this, unfortunately, with our current culture, we like those single, one-stop shop solutions. And I'm hopeful that we can all our heads can remain in the game and we can remain engaged to really, peel back those layers and do the work that's going to be needed to make real progress. But I'm encouraged because I do think that that's happening.
No, thank you. And we talked about this on our call, and hopefully one day we won't even be talking about this. It won't be an issue. We talked to Kim K about accountability and these pledges, and I can tell you about ours as well as from Stanton Chase. It has to be more than words on a paper. I mean, it has to be actionable, and it also have to be, I guess, who is the call to action? And it's not just women, it's everyone. And I think we talked about this, Kim, what women can do to drive this. And lastly, what isn't measured can't be managed. That if we don't have the data to track this, then we can't do anything about it. So
yeah,
you had some great things, so I'd love you to share them.
Hopefully I can remember back to that call last week, but no, it's, you're absolutely right. I mean, we have, I think like you were saying, Kim, this is a very complex issue. We're not going to solve this tomorrow. We're going to certainly put a lot more light. We're not going to be hiding in the shadows, I think, as we maybe have been. I think one of the things that is even challenging for me, and I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit. Actually, I grew up in Detroit, and then we moved to the suburbs of Detroit when I was a young child. And so to me, I have a different lens. I have a different perspective than anyone else, but we all do, right? We all have our own issues and how we address things. And some of us think we're being inclusive, and sometimes we're not. And so I think we need to really, peel the mask off of ourselves and really say, okay, I'm gonna start over again, and I'm gonna listen to someone tell me versus what I think I know, because that really, I think, opens up a fresh dialogue and allows us to really get to some of these things that could make some significant changes. One thing I go back to, though, is economic power. It's incredible how much economic power any one person has. And if you start to band together and we start to do this, in unison, we can make some amazing changes. There's another mentor of mine. Her name is Muriel Siebert, and she passed away several years ago, but she was the first woman to get a seat on the New York Stock Exchange. And she had to literally lie, cheat, and almost steal to get that seat because they wouldn't allow it to go to a woman. And because her name was Muriel, she put just an M and then Siebert, and they didn't really ask that question on the application. And so she got the seat, and then they were trying to decide if they were going to take it away from her. And she said, you know what, I just rallied around and I did what I needed to do, because to me, having a woman on the New York Stock Exchange and having a seat at that table was important. And then what she did with that is she translated that to working with the New York Educational Department and being able to then mentor and foster young youth of all colors and all races and all genders to learn what money is and to learn how to use a checkbook and what that power of that checkbook is. And to me, that's still something really important to me. So if we're going to change this dynamic, then let's start with today funding companies that are excellent companies, that are quality companies for people who may or may not have had access to capital, and make them not feel lesser because they don't understand the process, because they haven't grown up with that process. My mother, when she bought her first house, couldn't sign the document because it was 1974, and she had to have her father do it because she was an unmarried woman. She was a divorced woman. So we have made so many strides towards a lot of things. And so I think this is our next one, which is let's be mentors. Let's work with this next generation of these leaders. Let's get capital into their hands and let's help them use it wisely and foster that open communication and growth so that we're not sitting there, in another 10 or 20 years from now going, damn, we missed the boat. We could have had this really transformational moment. And cannabis doesn't have a playbook, you guys. So we can really do this right now with cannabis without anybody coming back and being like, oh no, that's not how it worked, 25 years ago when we started this company. We don't have that. So we can really make these changes right now and they can be so impactful. And so specifically for ArcView, our pledge is that, for 10 years we've been around and we've been really, really fighting the fight for social justice, social equity programs, legalizing cannabis, working in those communities most affected with the war on drugs. But we're going to double down, and we're not only just going to submit and talk about it, we're going to do it. So we're doing it by mentoring people of color, all genders, all races. We are looking at how do we mentor this next group of leaders? How do we match them with capital? So we're offering free memberships to people, Black and brown, who meet that criteria and are investing money. So come on over and become a member of ArcView. We embrace you. And we want this to be a win for everybody. You also said some about data. So did you know that 42% of all companies started in the US are started by women? Almost all of them are under $1 million in revenue. They never get past that point because they just don't have enough capital.
We could have a whole other discussion about alternate funding models and why the funding is messed up, but
yeah.
another time. I like what you said, like acknowledging that there are differences, because sometimes we don't see the issue, but we're not seeing it from the same side. I mean, from our perspective, similarly, Stanton Chase. So we're a member of the Association of Executive Search Consultants, which is our industry organization, and very quickly through this, all of the CEOs, our global chairman, Mickey Matthews, have come together to put together a pledge that says, we acknowledge that there are issues. We are committed to combating them, prejudice, discrimination in all forms within our own organizations, because for all my partners on the line, this has been a very male-dominated industry until more recently, but more so, how we can use our collective voices to help build this world that's inclusive, because diversity is there. It's inclusivity that is the issue that we have to face. So it's, as you said, it's certainly not a sprint, if only it were so. When we're working with our clients, we really search firms because we are advising our clients. We're not sort of here, this is what we want, you go find it. We're actually advising them, and we have a unique ability to help them build these diverse teams, because people often hire people who look like them, and you have to acknowledge that it's the diversity that is the strength of your organization. So we're very committed to that. And just a story I have to share, and I won't name names, but and this talks about accountability and calling people out. So I once had a client, and it was a board search, and we'd been engaged for a diversity search, and I met with the CEO, and he said, we don't need a woman on our search, on our board. We're working just fine. And I said, no, you need two at least. And he laughed, but then they went and did it. So we were able to help them with that. But it's calling people out and having them acknowledge that there is an issue that we need to work together on. So now we are coming up to, there was one important topic that I wanted to talk about, and that was how you build high-performing teams. And I'm not sure that we have a time to really get into it, but maybe we've talked about some of these. But Kim R., when you were building your team, you've had to create something from the ground up. What are the leadership attributes that you look for?
So, I mean, I think that, first and foremost in the cannabis space, and particularly a company like Trulieve, the only thing constant is change. So it is really important for folks to be, and look, as people, right, we're not all wired to be comfortable with changing environments, particularly rapidly changing environments. And so when we look at our growth trajectory, as just an example, within the first year of us opening a store, year in to year end, I think we grew like 419% or something like that. in revenue. And so that means, right, when you think about everything going into that growth, that the job description that you were brought in and interviewed and hired for, right, was dramatically different, literally in a 12-month period. And so actually on our team with all of my direct reports, we do quarterly reviews because it moves that quickly. And so giving folks an opportunity to make sure that they feel supported, they have a voice, they can say if they need more resources, talking through how their actual role and department has morphed and shifted is really, really important. So I would say that, in terms of, attracting and looking at teams, so first and foremost, we are very interested in who you are as a person. Can you adapt to change? Are you kind of ready to embark on this very fast journey that is cannabis? And look, I mean, the reality is that many folks don't come from cannabis. I mean, I didn't come from cannabis. Many of our executive team members didn't come from cannabis. And so looking for those skill sets that define a role or that are integral to a role, as opposed to direct in industry experience, which I think would be more common for other established industries. And so that's going to vary, obviously, role to role, but we're also looking holistically at the team, always, in terms of, okay, what's missing, right? How is this person's life experience? How is this person's background going to add depth to the conversations that we're having strategically, skill sets that we're missing, point of views that we're missing? And so I think it's both an individualized as well as a holistic, conversation when we're looking to add team members. One thing that I like to do when I'm hiring for specific positions is to start with phone interviews. That way I don't have any sort of bias, or I'm at least toning down the bias that I may bring to the table, which I recognize we all have when screening those candidates, and then pulling in, a top 3. Then I oftentimes want them to get in front of not just me, but also other key members of our team, so that, again, we can look at fit, feel, communication style. All of that is really important, I think, in that whole team dynamic. So someone has to come to the table ready to roll up their sleeves, dive in. As you know, Cathy, we're a very fast, hard charging organization. You got to want to win. You got to be, we call it, in it to win it, and really ready to hit the ground running, and excited about that, and passionate about the space, and passionate about what we're doing. And then, of course, have the requisite ability to have balance and contribute in a team environment.
Yeah, it's certainly not for the faint of heart, right?
No, it's not.
Not a 9-to-5 job. And from our point of view, I mean, our task really is to identify those people who can make the transition. Because, as you said, no one comes from cannabis. And some people, when we speak to them, it's, I never thought about that. And some people, but slowly the stigma, that's why it's good to have an ambassador. But how can you make the change, the transition from an industry that's perhaps more stable, but yet bring all of those best practices with you, and put them into practice? Kay, I wanted to ask you as well. Like, it's often said people don't invest in companies, they invest in people. And I guess when you're assessing your investments, what do you look for?
Well, every time you say, what's the top 3 things, you say the team, the team, the team. I think that's absolutely true. And one of the things that I always look to, like an entrepreneur who's coming in and saying, here's my team. And, we know you can't afford, especially early stage, you can't afford to have your whole team built out. We'd like to see who those personas are and who you're envisioning to bring in when you do get capitalized or when you do grow. And so one challenge question I always like to throw out there is, what does your team look like in a couple of years from now? Not just today or tomorrow, but as you start to really, put the pedal to the metal and scale, what are those next, second and third string hires that you have to bring in to really make that an accelerated business? And, to me, it's watching how they think and how they respond to things like this that really gets me excited, because that's what you're investing in, is their ability to, in times of a crisis and a pandemic and civil unrest and all these things that are going on, how are they going to handle it? Are they going to be able to step into this role and be calm and supportive and thoughtful and, maybe a little bold sometimes, or maybe a little amnesia sometimes, but, how are they going to handle that crisis? Because it happens. It happens. Every single startup has its own issue. And so you really have to, look at that resilience of that team member. The other part that I want to say too is, I like investing in more than just one person. This is me personally. We have a lot of single founders out there and they try to do it alone, and it's so much work. I mean, it really is. So if you are going to do it alone, make sure you have a really good advisory board. And I'm not talking about people who are just on there for like in perpetuity and get shares, but really pick the advisors that are going to help you get to the next level. And that might be a month from now, or it could be 6 months. If I see an advisor that's been on for more than 6 months, I question that advisor. I really do, because you need them in different stages along the way of your company. And then the last thing I'll say about sort of employees, and this is a hard lesson for me because I always, try to be very sort of, bull in the china shop, and, I got the great idea and I try to drag everybody. I really love to listen to people, and I love the sense of purpose. This is like my new thing is everybody has a sense of purpose at ArcView or anywhere else that I have worked is, you give this employee or this team member a sense of purpose and they just absolutely run with it, and it's great. And their title may change 10 times, right? But they still have a sense of purpose because they're just a rock star data person, or they're a rock star, engagement manager of some sort. And you'll find the right role for those people that are just like that.
Thanks, Kim. I hope this is all recorded because I want to listen to it again. That's for sure.
Me too.
So we have 15 minutes left, and we wanted to allow time for some Q&A. And I think there are a number of questions. And I know Kim R has a hard stop at 6. She's been going since 4 a.m. Maybe even.
Well, let's let her go first because I can always answer some in the after party too. So.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely. So thank you all so much for typing your questions into the Q&A. The first question for Kim Rivers, Megan Corbat would like to know, what advice do you have for a manager level candidate that is looking to move to the cannabis industry? What should the candidate focus on highlighting about their experience and any faux pas to avoid?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would love to, and I know it's general, so I'm going to keep it general, but my first inclination would be to ask some additional questions, right? To understand, what is it that they're manager of what, right? Because that's gonna tailor their response. So I would say that just like in kind of anything else, to make sure that for the particular role that you're approaching, that one, you've done your homework. So you need to understand, just like, and this is just kind of, I think, interviewing 101, you need to understand who the company is, you need to understand who you're going to be in front of. You're going to need to assess the best that you can, why is it that they're hiring that position? What need are you attempting to fill, or what do you think that they're attempting to fill? And don't be shy about asking that question. So I find that the most interesting and likely candidates are ones that have done their homework, not only about us, by the way, but also our competitors and the environment, and come with questions. So I believe that perhaps you're hiring this role because of a need here. Is that assumption correct, or is there something else? And what would an ideal candidate look for? And then listen very intently in the interview, and you better than anyone. So don't forget that. And what your background and your skill set is that to highlight, and what your strengths are. And don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. So I guarantee you, particularly as females, one thing that I would say that we tend to shy away from is, tooting our own horn and talking about our own accolades. And so pulling in analogous examples, I find, examples are really important, and how you've handled specific challenge situations and overcome those. Particularly, again, anything in this industry is going to be fast-paced and change-oriented. So, think about, opportunities in your life where you've had to overcome, or you've succeeded in those types of environments, and make sure that you highlight that as well. I would say faux pas. Faux pas are coming in uninformed, right? Coming in not really knowing who we are, not really understanding, where this industry is going. I mean, my God, as a public company, like, I feel like I've like, we have no secrets. There's, you can find out all you need to know or want to know about us. And so, just, showing us that you've done your homework and that you're coming prepared. And, it may not be the best time to, talk to me about your personal consumption habits. It's fine if that's, but, I can tell you I've been in a number of awkward interviews where, you know, it just sort of goes into that lane. And so, you know, we are all professional businesses that are very, you know, that we're serious about what we do. And so just understanding that as well. Hope that helps.
One other question for you, Kim Rivers. What markets do you feel are the most attractive to expand your footprint? And that is coming from Joseph Donnelly.
Oh, Joseph, are you a shareholder or an institutional fund? I get that question all the time. Obviously, we are a publicly traded company, so I am not able to give out non-public information. What I can say, of course, is that we are expanding currently in Massachusetts, and so that's our next big play. We're building out there. We're building 140,000 square foot. Also purposely placed in a majority economically depressed area. That's something that's been very important to us. We're headquartered in a majority minority community in Florida. That's another part of our diversity and inclusion work that we're doing. So excited to bring that online, and we'll be opening dispensaries there as well. We also have operations in Connecticut and in California. So, but you know, we have been very active in expansion, both through M&A and also through organic growth. So I would say stay tuned.
For all three panelists, how are you informing African American women about your inclusion programs? Teresa Autry would like to learn more.
So I mean, I can kick it off. So we are first of all, we have like a lot of companies, a space on our website where we're specifically calling out our initiatives. That's very easy to find and you know, comprehensive in terms of what we're doing. In addition, you know, we have partnered with a number of groups. So we're partners with Minorities for Medical Marijuana. For those of you who are in the marijuana space and are interested in minority issues, it's a great resource as well. Run by an African-American woman, Roz McCarthy, who's an absolute rock star. So I'll give a plug for Roz as well. So we also partner with them to also co-partner and co-market things that we do in this space. And so those are our two main avenues currently, but would love, if you have suggestions, would love to hear additional opportunities.
So for us, I'll go real quick and then I'll hand it over to Cathy. So for us, we have our advocacy statement on our site, and one of the things that we have opened up for June, we brought in 2 entrepreneur founder memberships for free. There's a lot of people applying for that, and so we just had to limit it to 2 because of we're matching them up with different mentors and different things, and so we wanted to kick that off in the right way, and we're going to be expanding that program. So please go hit that and apply if you meet some of those criteria, and we can help you get connected to this industry. I mean, that's what we're all about. We're a connection. We're a network. You know, we connect people, and so we're, like I said, doubling down and really stepping into this space because I think it's necessary. And so we embrace you, and I'm going to shout out, there's Laura asking the questions. She's going to post her email in chat, so then you can reach out to her directly.
Thank you, KK. No, from our perch, what we see is similarly. So, you know, a pledge you'll see on our website as well. We're very committed to this ourselves. What, you know, our industry has been, you know, I'll acknowledge it, is fairly white. And we know part of it, the first part is acknowledging there's an issue. We are putting it to action. You know, words are words, but putting it to action. And we have formed a task force internally, but also with all of our member firms that are also members of the Association of Executive Search Consultants, all of the top 10 firms worldwide. And how do we do this? How do we take it, you know, not only advising our clients, but also ourselves, attracting diverse talent to our own, because you can't be advising our clients without having an acknowledgement of what diversity is yourself. So I'm happy to chat about that offline. It's probably a long conversation.
Thanks so much. And last question, I know that we're running out of time here. All things being equal, what separates a lifestyle business entrepreneur from those who build businesses that are VC backed and end up becoming unicorns? Is it the business model, the team, or something else? For everyone on the panel.
What's the magic
Who would
formula?
like to go first? Let's see. I got my little crystal ball.
You've started companies and
yeah.
you go.
Why don't I take that one first? So here's the thing is, you know, taking other people's money, OPM, is a decision you have to make that you can't come back from. So I want to say it's like getting married because you could actually get divorced. Okay. It's like having children, right? They're with you forever, and that's your investor. They are with you forever. So if you're going to take other people's money, you have to be committed to, one, working with them, because also angels, you're investing your own money. When I make a deal into I invest into a company, it's the money that I have, that I've earned, that I'm putting into that company. It's different than taking a loan from a bank or other, sources of capital. So that person wants to be involved, and you want them involved. You want to have that expanded group of people that care about you and want to see you successful. Number one. Number two is you have to have an exit plan. So I also see a lot of people start up and go, well, I never want to sell my company. Well, that's how investors get their money back, is by you selling the company or going public or doing something where there's an exit. So you have to really understand what the differences are between, VC or a private equity backed business and one that's just self-funded. And there are differences, and you have to be ready for it. And once you're ready and you do take that money in, don't go backwards, because then it just creates a problem with the people that have invested in you. Okay. And so is there a magic formula? Sure. Find the next unicorn. Find a place where, you can apply your talents and you can find that white space that nobody's covering right now. And it can be in all kinds of industries. And it doesn't have to be just in one thing or another. There are these little tiny white, Zoom, for example, was a white space that happened. I mean, there were a lot of video conferencing. All of a sudden they became a verb, right? When you become a verb, you become a unicorn. So there you go.
That's great. Kim R, I can field this question on the after party or by email, but maybe I'll let you go next.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, and I agree completely, 100%, and will ditto everything that the other Kim said. Related to that, what the only other thing that I will just say is, and this is just from the CEO seat, is that focus and discipline are so important. And so I see so many companies that want to do it all. Right? They're going to do this, and they're going to do this, and they're going to do this, and then they're going to do this, and we're going to be in hemp, and we're going to be here, and we're going to sell in Europe, and we're going to sell, and so, and I mean, I guess I just always equate it, and I've said this before, think about, that restaurant that you love, that you go back and back and back to. Oftentimes, right, for me anyway, it's the restaurant with the limited menu, that this is what they do. This is what they're known for, right? They're the best at X. And it's not the restaurant necessarily that has the 340-page menu that you're flipping through and you forgot what you looked at on page 10, right? This is the, salad page when you get to the burger page and there's 20 choices on each. So I would just, remind folks to make sure that you're creating a narrative, that you're executing on that narrative, and that you're doing it with focus and purpose and intent. And if you are the best at whatever it is, you will get to the next opportunity, is what I would say. And I think that that's one thing in this business particularly that I see folks struggle with, because there are a lot of shiny objects, right? And so focusing and executing before maybe moving on to the next would be a piece of advice.
Thank you so much. I think that's all that we have time for. And that was all of the audience questions. I'll pass it back over to Kim Kovacs now.
Well, thank you. And thank you both so much for joining me today with Tales from the Top. I think this was great. I learned so much. Kim, really enjoyed spending time with you. I haven't had a chance to do that yet. So really appreciate it. And I look forward to the next time. And Cathy, you are the hostess with the mostest, I got to say. You are amazing. So thank you for, keeping us on track and asking the really good and tough questions. And this is a tough time. So, I really appreciate all that you guys are doing in this industry, and hoping that everybody's safe and healthy. So we'll see you over in the after party. Take care, everybody.
Thanks
so much. I'm so glad you could join us, Kim Rivers.
Bye. Thanks, Cathy. Thanks, Kim.
Thanks everyone so much. And we're going to leave this link open for another 5 minutes or so if you want to complete the survey that's popped up on your screen. There's 8 questions. Everybody else will be muted and offline. And thank you all for joining us. Kim and Cathy, if you want to check your email, you can go ahead and head over to the member after party now. Thank you so much.
Great. I'll see you at the party. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, Sean. Just letting you know that the link to the after party is sent to your email. It's a separate Zoom link, and you'll be able to log in the same way that you did for this webinar.
Okay.
I'll have Erica forward it to you again. So it's at the top. All right. Thank you all so much. I'm ending this now. It looks like everybody's completed their poll. So thank you for joining, and we'll see you at the after party.